Hi, welcome back, guys. I believe we're starting soon. And our next match is going to be Kitkatz versus Gnimsh. Now, both of these were the losers of their first matches. And unfortunately, they came out the worst of their team battles. Kitkatz against Reynad and Gnimsh against his fellow teammate Strifecro. Do you think they're going to be doing a little better against each other now, Frodan?
Yep, sorry about that. I was cutting out back on Skype, but I think so. I think Kitkatz and Gnimsh, they're good friends too. Don't forget that. They've met before and they've kind of hung out. At DreamHack, we had a lot of fun. And Kitkatz, he's been working hard. He's actually just ranked in or clocked in as ranked number one on ladder. Excuse me, tripping over my words here. Kitkatz has been playing it. He's been back at it. And when Kitkatz is motivated, he's one of the best players around, that's for sure. And that's what we saw in him when he was joining Temple Storm. At the same time, Gnimsh seemed like he was getting some good shots with Rag, and he was in kind of a good position. But overall, still felt like Gnimsh's play was not at his best. So if I have to pick a player and lean towards it, I'd choose Kitkatz here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Kitkatz was sitting on rank number 2 on ladder on NA for a while. I think he's had it for like the past 3 days or something. Yep. And just recently he hit number 1, which is certainly an accomplishment. Meanwhile, Gnimsh, I haven't heard that he was playing Hearthstone a lot lately. Every time I talk to him, he talks to me about Puzzles and Dragons or something, a game like that. And it's always like, Kevin, do you want to play some Puzzles and Dragons?
Is that the name of the game?
I don't think so, but it's pretty close.
It sounds like it would make it kind of what people really like. It's epic and it has some puzzle. It has some logic games. So if Gnimsh is going for it, then I'm sure it's really fun. In the meantime, Handlock versus Warrior, we just saw this between Strifecro and Reynad. In fact, we just saw it so recently that you see it on the overlay still, so we'll get that fixed ASAP. And it's funny because it's another Cloud9 versus another Temple Storm member, but this time in opposite seats of classes. Kitkatz is on the Warrior.
Yeah, Reynad proved that Tempo Storm was the stronger team last round. Tempo Storm is now up 1-0 against Cloud9 if this were a clan war. And now we get to see if Gnimsh can bring that back.
That's right. You know, last month, Cloud9 did get the better of Tempo Storm overall in the rankings. And I would say just matching up in general. Overall, it seems like Cloud9 did have a little bit of an edge. But now we're pulling it back. And I'm proud of my boys. Good job. Gnimsh, of course, is also a dear friend of mine, and I think he's really comfortable with Handlock. Back in like Seat Story Cup times, Gnimsh said Handlock was just one of his favorite classes. Even though he was known for Zoo, he said he really loves Handlock too. So I expect good things out of this game.
Yeah, Kitkatz, he has an answer for a giant in the execute, but he doesn't have an answer for a second giant. Gnimsh is going to be playing back-to-back giants, and Kitkatz is going to have to be a little creative with how he deals with the second giant.
Well, creative will wait till later. Most likely just continue to remove and pass. And then Gnimsh not only has a giant, but then he's got ways to solidify it with more pressure. He's got double Belcher in hand. He's got Faceless Manipulator in case he recognizes an opportunity to press. He didn't tap for an extra card. What do you think about this? Oh, interesting. Does Gnimsh want to push out the Ancient Watcher too?
I think at this point, he realizes that he didn't tap for a second card. And he's realizing, oh, I probably should have done that. But at this point, if you do coin and tap right now, then you're kind of admitting that you made a mistake.
Okay, I thought he wanted to coin out an Ancient Watcher. That's what I thought at first. Because then if you play the Ancient Watcher, you can't coin out the Mountain Giant. So that's what I thought he was going for. But I guess your explanation makes much more sense. I try to see the good in people, Monk.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm the pessimist in this situation.
No, I think you're actually right, though, because Gnimsh did hesitate for a while. And it seemed like maybe he wanted to coin out and tap. I'm not sure.
Now, the Black Knight kind of matches up perfectly against the Sledge Belcher, but you could also try to faceless your own Mountain Giant. Gnimsh chooses to go for the Black Knight. I guess it has some merits, but I think I would prefer to get more threats on the board. Your opponent clearly didn't have what it took to deal with one Giant, so why would he have enough to deal with two? The other thing is that because you use the Black Knight, you kind of save 2 health on this Mountain Giant, and you cleared a 1-2. So I guess there are merits to this Black Knight as well.
Right. It's not like you're not playing anything and just removing. You still put a 4 or 5 body out there, which still could bait out removal. That might be saved best elsewhere. But it is Gnimsh's choice. I think do tend to lean towards playing the bigger threats, especially against Warrior, where if you control the board so much, their big threats aren't big threats at all.
Wow, an owl, which is a huge draw against this of his opponents. Gnimsh goes for the faceless on his opponent's Cairn. Does that over his hurt mountain giant. I guess both creatures are kind of they're really hard for Warrior to deal with, but I guess the Cairn is even more difficult for the Warrior to deal with than an 8/7 giant, which you could just execute. Also, this makes his board a little bit more resilient to brawl, which is one of the only ways that Kitkatz could get back at this point.
Yeah, you're right. And now Kitkatz, uh, he's kind of in a awkward spot. The execute comes, but it can actually be taken out by the Fiery War Axe. So if he wants to use his execute, it's going down the Black Knight. And then that doesn't even feel great because there's still a Cairn out there.
Now, you'd mentioned that like Kitkatz was doing really well on ladder with this deck, but on ladder you don't see many hand locks, and you don't even see, I guess, that many druids. You just see a lot of hunters. Could it be that he's maybe like tailoring his deck too much towards hunters, and it's just not really that great for the tournament setting?
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point. The fact that hunters are so common and have chased handlocks out because of the one-sided matchup in favor of the hunter really does give Kitkatz a little bit of lack of practice against handlock, but also the fact that maybe his deck isn't optimized for it. But also, to be fair, there are hunters in this group. Strifecro and Reynad do play hunter, so that also could play a factor. Kitkatz is not going to wait any longer. Gromash will come out, even if he knows his opponent has the possibility of Siphon Soul.
Yeah, that 10/5 on the board right now, it's not looking it's kind of looking menacing, but not really. But at the same time, it's really difficult to remove a 5 health minion. I was talking to Kitkatz a few months ago, and he was saying in this matchup, you really want to grind it out against the handlock, and you always want to be threatening lethal with your Grom. But now that Kitkatz has threatened, he's put out this Grom right now. The handlock is basically under no pressure from the Warlock from any burst damage. So I think Gnimsh can just take the trade right now, and he can just afford to, be more aggressive and just leave his life a bit more open to any attacks. He knows his opponent can't deal 12 damage from his hand right now with the Grom, so even going to something like 10 health isn't really that scary.
Gnimsh contemplating if he wants to trade Cairn and play a Sludge Belcher along with his Twilight Drake, or go for a Hellfire and then a Sludge Belcher slash Twilight Drake. And opts to go for the Hellfire clear. And I think that's good too, considering, like you said, makes you more resilient to something like Brawl. Keeping the first body on Cairn is just really annoying because if you remove it, they're still not done. And overall, I think I do favor the Hellfire because it's not like it gets a great value in the matchup anyways.
Yeah, there's not that much pressure from Gnimsh right now. He's always going to be afraid of a Leroy combo, but 8 damage is, I guess, all right in this circumstance. Kitkatz could maybe decide to go for a Sarah to try to maybe have that 1% chance of coming into that game, coming back into the game. If his opponent can't deal with the Asera, maybe he can draw something like 2 Sarah. But I don't know. Does he want to be a little more defensive? He also has the option of a Spellbreaker to silence one of these 2 targets, but after that, he doesn't really have. There's not really an effective option to deal with what remains of the 2 targets, either a 4/2 or a 4/1. You don't really want to execute either a 4/2 or a 4/1, and I believe you can't even execute the 4/1 because it's technically not hurt after being silenced.
Right. Oh, Gnimsh telling Kitkatz to wake up. Spellbreaker does come out. And Kitkatz goes for this play, fearing a Leroy combo. Gnimsh doesn't have it. Picks up Mortal Coil, which helps him push through a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, Mortal Coil is definitely a huge draw, but Gnimsh is going to Shadow Flame first.
Yeah.
Mortal Coil, it can deal with a lot of 1 HP creatures, But we've been seeing this a lot in this tournament where a 4 attack creature gets matched up against a 5 health creature, and Mortal Coil can just really be the difference in that circumstance.
Genie for your weenie says Reynad is so hot when he's serious. Sounds like a Hearthstone Zoolander parody. Period. Hearthstone Zoolander parody. God, I talked so much in the past week, messing up my own jokes. Kitkatz goes for Ysera and draws Ysera Awakens. Does Gnimsh have damage though to kill him? He's got Leroy and power. No, looks like he's 3 off. A Soulfire would be it, and Gnimsh gets the Soulfire, and that's gonna be game number 1.
Of course, he gets the
Gnimshed it.
Soulfire. It's Gnimsh.
He's asked me specifically to start bringing back this term. Kitkatz just got
Has he?
Gnimshed. There we go.
Yeah, and Kitkatz also lied, I guess, because he did not win this first game.
Did he say he won this first game before it even happened?
No, he didn't. But I was just trying to bring
Okay.
in like the terms that both these players were known for.
Right, the popular community sayings or so.
Yeah,
All right,
I
well-
think we can definitely see probably a hunter coming in from Kitkatz, but oh wow,
doesn't have
Kitkatz doesn't
hunter.
actually. He doesn't have a hunter.
He's got Priest and he's got Warlock.
I don't believe Priest is going to be very good against this handlock that Gnimsh has, unless it's specifically tailored to deal with handlock. So I think Kitkatz probably he's not a big fan of Zoo. He's not a big fan of aggro just in general. So I think it's going to be a handlock mirror we're probably going to see next.
Yeah, so you see that he has an opportunity to pick, I guess, this Dark Rattlesnake or Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. And if whichever one he goes with, honestly, feels like it can go poorly. Like I personally hate handlock mirrors because of how swingy things go. But then again, I hate most mirrors. I think the only mirror I is Druid versus Druid. But yeah, I don't know. I guess actually Warrior versus Warrior isn't bad either. Do you
You
like
kinda
mirror
like those,
matchups in
like-
Hearthstone, Monk?
Not particularly. I feel like they more than most they kind of really depend on who draws what, and that kind of just swings the game too much. Some mirrors I do like. I agree with you. I like the Druid mirror. I kind of like the Shaman mirror. That's kind of interesting. And these are all kind of mirrors where you don't lose with the first draws, but you can kind of gain slight advantages on each turn. And they're also both
Yeah.
about board control, which I think is very interesting.
The only thing I have a problem with Shaman mirrors is totems. That's like the number one thing that I hate about the mirrors. But I guess that's part of the fun too. You can't always know what you're gonna get, so part of the mystique there. Handlock mirrors it is. As Kitkatz is going for handlock, I think I can get behind that. I just don't think Priest has a good chance whatsoever against a handlock, especially the new modern Priests that are even more liberal with Shadow Word Deaths, let alone other cards like Holy Fire to help push through taunts in the final stages of the game. So I can get behind this pick from Kitkatz.
Yeah, Kitkatz actually also has the better starting hand of the two. He has that Mountain Giant, and unless Gnimsh draws something to counteract that Mountain Giant, such as either a big BGH or a Mountain Giant of his own, Kitkatz will be in a huge lead.
Yes, and going first might not matter. Going first usually is nice because you get the first threat out there, and you can basically be really reactive. If you have Faceless and Sludge Belcher, you can kind of evaluate how to continue to play the turns out. Versus going second, you have to always react to how your opponent is. But now Kitkatz, unless Gnimsh gets this next card as a Twilight Drake or Mountain Giant, doesn't have anything to do, and he picks up a Twilight Drake, so a big moment for Gnimsh. Otherwise, he would have had a very passive turn.
Yeah, it's also very key that the Twilight Drake is 9 health and not 8 health, or it just would have traded horribly against the Mountain Giant.
Okay.
Mountain Giant comes on board. Ooh, an owl. You know, if Kitkatz had played a Twilight Drake right there instead of a Mountain Giant, he would have been in a lot of trouble. Gnimsh had the owl Mortal Coil combination, which just deals perfectly with opposing Twilight Drakes.
Oh, yeah.
But unfortunately, that Mountain Giant is not a Twilight Drake right now.
It's so funny how Ironbeak Owl fits in this deck, but in most other decks, it's like Spellbreaker as the silence. It fits the curve so well with and Handlock, and it's very versatile with the Mortal
Yeah,
Coil.
definitely.
It's just funny how like most other decks hate Iron Beak Owl because of, but in this deck, Iron Beak Owl is amazing.
Well, I think there's actually kind of a debate about whether you want to use Ironbeak Owl or Spellbreaker and Paladin. We've seen most European
Oh
players
yeah.
prefer the Spellbreakers, but we've seen a lot of North American players, especially North American Paladin players, such as Kayuki and Freshka, prefer the Owl because they feel like it just kind of you kind of just want to fit more stuff into Paladin turns.
Yeah, that's interesting. Also, it makes sense considering Paladin is pretty heavy sometimes on the hand, and the fact that Spellbreaker is 4 mana and there are already a lot of 4 mana cards. I can understand that.
Yeah, a lot of value from Kitkatz on that turn.
Yeah.
He attacked with the Mountain Giant back to full HP. Gnimsh has a potential power overwhelming Shadow Flame turn right now, and it does really clear the board fairly effectively. But do you want to get rid of so many valuable cards such as that power overwhelming, especially, and also the Twilight Drake in exchange for your opponent's board?
You don't have to get rid of the Twilight Drake. You can make it live for 1 health if you Shadow Flame the 1/2 and then attack the Drake into it.
Oh, I see.
And in fact, if you have a
Yeah,
Farseer and your opponent can't answer, I think that's strictly better.
yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, Gnimsh also did not see that play, and yeah, it's unfortunate because he would have gotten to keep a fairly beefy Twilight Drake.
Yeah, considering that Kit only had Soulfire and you could have opted not to, then it would have been different now. But now Nimsh will just kind of progress with a 1/2 at full health. So at least that's the the benefit, I suppose. And also
Yeah,
he's playing with Molten Giant in
yeah.
mind. He can't attack quickly into Molten Giant range.
Well, at least this 1/2 can't get executed, I guess. I guess that's
Yeah,
the
that's right.
benefit.
You're playing around execute from the hand lock, sure.
Yeah.
All right, Lotheb
Gnimsh,
is actually a very important card in this mirror matchup to secure boards. Resilient against
yeah,
Shadow Flame and really powerful to deny Soulfire. But Gnimsh just
yeah.
tosses it out here. And I would like him to feel a little bit more hesitant because I feel like Lotheb is so valuable because what it can do.
Yeah, well, what you're saying when you play Lothab is that you're forcing your opponent to play a minion in response, or you'll just have too much control of the board. And luckily for Kitkatz, he does have a minion, but unfortunately for Kitkatz, the minion is Sledge Belcher, which happens to trade unfavorably against the Lothab.
Yeah, one of the few. 5/5s are the best way to kill Sludge Belchers, card for card. And Lotheb is kind of a really good situation because not only does he shut down the spells, most likely Sludge Belcher is the only response you have because of the mana slots.
Oh, Gnimsh kind of mirrors Kitkat's previous play and heals his Lothab back to full health. Pretty good board. And Gnimsh actually had the opportunity to play Ragnaros this previous turn, but I think that was just way too risky. If that Ragnaros hits face, then two Molten Giants immediately come down, some kind of Shadow Flame play, and you've just lost complete board control.
So, a couple of options. You do have a board clear potential for Kitkatz, which could be really important. At the same time, as these turns develop, there's a few things you have to bear in mind. One, Kitkatz has to keep the combo in mind of Leroy, and he is sitting at a health where it's not too far-fetched to just die if he gives up his board. The second is how do you set up your own board with like these Molten Giants because you are lower than your opponent and you aren't, and it's very clear that he's got just smaller threats because he's had a lot of mana and yet he hasn't dropped any Mountain Giants or Twilight Drakes following up. So he's kind of in a position here. If he wants to go for a clear, you can just simply use his Defender of Argus and kind of buff and go for a Shadow Flame play. But it seems like he's opting for something else instead, using just attack and Shadow Flame. Okay.
Yeah, I'm interested in how he's going to get rid of this 5/1 Lothab.
Just a Hellfire, I
Oh,
suppose.
Hellfire. I guess that's fair.
Yep.
And he can, unfortunately, he doesn't get a Mountain Giant out of that. Now he's really banking on his opponent not having Leroy. Oh, he actually knows that his opponent doesn't have power overwhelming, so
Right.
he can't really pull off any part of that combo. So he feels a little safe right now, going to 13 HP, and that's one of the problems with using power overwhelming so early is that it allows your opponent to play more greedily and put you in situations such as this where your opponent can afford to go to a low HP to activate his giants, whereas you aren't able to go to that low HP without feeling threatened yourself.
At the same time, though, Gnimsh is one card off from killing his opponent. If he had Soulfire, then Leroy, Soulfire, and Hellfire actually is a kill.
Oh man.
Gnimsh is going for Ragnaros straight to the face. Doesn't care if he has Molten Giants. He did just use Shadow Flame, so that's maybe a way for him to remove it that he's out of his hand. But Kitkatz can now double Molten Giants, Siphon Soul, Taunt Up, and kind of sit back and relax.
Yeah, this is exactly what Gnimsh did not want to see. He was kind of setting up for his Leroy plus Hellfire turn, but if Kitkatz decides to Siphon Soul and taunt up the two giants, then I don't know what Gnimsh can do. He doesn't really have anything that can clear these two giants, and he won't be able to go for lethal. He has kind of a lot of tech cards that give minions taunt, that deal 1 HP, that silence minions, that do 6 damage, but nothing really that really develops his board next turn, or it can deal with an 8/8.
But I realized how clever it is because Gnimsh has double Ironbeak Owl. So he actually can get past 2 taunts. We forgot to take note of that.
Yeah.
And double Ironbeak Owl still allows Leroy to push through. It doesn't give him the flexibility of mana, though, because that costs 8. So he still doesn't have lethal. If he had Soulfire, that still could be different. But of course, if he had Soulfire the previous turn, he would have just won. Oh, Gnimsh, what are you going to do here?
I think, is he gonna? I think what Gnimsh could do is set up for the lethal by silencing both giants, but then you're kind of banking on the fact that your opponent doesn't have a second taunter, which Kitkatz does.
Oh, Soulfire is 1 card away. Can he still do this?
Wait, I think he wins.
Oh yeah,
he wins.
I think he has. Yeah, because the Leroy just goes through because Soulfire. We were counting the way Hellfire could be squeezed in, but Soulfire was the 1 card he needed.
Oh wow!
Oh my god, Kitkatz just got Gnimshed again.
Yeah, Gnimsh twice in a row. That top deck, and we even see Gnimsh smiling a bit at his like really fortunate luck.